All right, Joel Gausten here from joelgausten.com. Been bouncing all over the country and the world lately with these interviews. I figured it was time to get back to Chicago, a city I love, and welcome one of my favorite people from that city, Mr. Eric McWhorter. How you doing, man?
Oh, loving life, living the dream, man.
As one does.
Yes.
One does. Great. Well, thanks for
How are
being.
you? How are you?
I'm okay. I'm okay. See, now we're going to pretend we didn't talk before we started recording. Oh yeah, things are wonderful. Nothing new going on. No problems with anything. It's perfect. Perfect. Right on. But seriously though, thank you for being here, man. I've wanted to bring you on for a bit, so this is really cool.
Thank you.
And for those folks who are watching who may not know of Eric's history, he's been a longtime musician in Chicago. I think it's fair to say predominantly within the industrial scene, we'll call it. A lot of bands, a lot of years. So we're gonna dive into as much of that as we possibly can. So starting off at the obvious point, the beginning, when and how did the music bug hit you, and what led you to actually put yourself through the torture of being a working musician?
Well, uh, I'm actually a classically trained pianist. I began piano at 4 and uh, played French horn in middle school. Have always been in choir throughout those years. And looking back, I think I should have, instead of having gone into physics, gone into music. That having been said, it's always been an undercurrent um, throughout my life. I grew up the son of a farmer and welder, and was in a welding shop almost every day during my formative years. And having the cyclical rhythms of that intertwined with my love of Bach
Hmm.
um, somehow drew me to the industrial side of things. I've always loved um, making noise, making rhythmic noise, making arrhythmic noise. Uh, and somehow I funneled myself here. My first band forays were in college, and uh, being invited to jam with people as I learned guitar, transitioning from piano. Then moving to Chicago in the mid 90s,
Hmm.
having missed several years that would have been awesome to have been here for. Um, but I hit the ground running, followed one of my friends' bands, several of my friends from college actually, Talisman, Salamander Red, up to Chicago. Uh, I knew I, I I went to a residential high school in Aurora, the Illinois Math and Science Academy, and that was my first time really spending a significant period of time outside of the farmlands. And I knew kind of in that time period that um, I had to be in an urban area with the weirdos.
Mhm.
And when I had the chance to come up here to follow my friends and have kind of a base point in the mid 90s, that's when I came to Chicago and surrounding areas and never turned back.
So was Salamander Red the first band you had that was proper out playing gigs, doing things like that?
Yeah. Uh, at Western Illinois University, where I met Chris Harris, with whom I formed Project 44 later. Um, uh, my friends had a house where they had the basement set up as their studio, and when they finished their homework, they started rocking out. Um, probably one of the tightest bands I've ever seen as a result of that. Um, they invited me to play with them. I had them over to my house for a couple of house parties, joined them for, let's do Mountain Song, stuff like that. At one point, we did 3 days together, unrehearsed. But my drummer, Shane, good friend Shane, I knew he knew it like the back of his hand anyway. And so uh, we rocked that out together and we formed a musical bond. And when they came up to Chicago, I don't know if you're familiar with Artists in Residence. It's one of the residences along the North Shore where musicians and artists get together and live in kind of a almost dorm-like complex, but not affiliated with any university. Um, my friend Shane moved in there, and we just started jamming more. And at some point, the singer Nathan of Salamander Red wanted to transition fully off of the guitar and move to the microphone. And at that point, he was looking for someone who knew their songs and could kind of step in. And um, I picked up the guitar at that point, uh, and so Salamander Red was where it began for me in Chicago.
And what year would that have been?
Oh, 94. Yeah, 94, 95. Yeah.
Yeah, I asked because, and you mentioned mid-90s Chicago, which I'd imagine would have been an interesting time scene-wise, because of course, there's that 80s Wax Trax boom, all the great stuff that came out then, Allen Ministry, they hit it big early 90s. So there's like this industrial boom globally early.
Mhm.
So that goes into mid-90s Chicago. How would you describe the scene at that point? And how did the sort of industrial blossoming that happened around that time sort of impact the city and color it, would you say?
Hmm. Well, around that time, you know, I had missed some of the heyday, as it were. Um, and having, come in kind of mid scene, uh, I, my observations aren't as deep, perhaps, uh, respectively. That having been said, uh, I can say there were so many clubs, Neo, Exit, 950, Berlin, like so many clubs, RIP, that held court essentially, and paid homage to all of the late 80s, early 90s, all the way back to Medusas and Frankie Knuckles and the inception of Wax Trax and stuff. Um, I remember coming into Chicago at that time feeling like it was starting to fracture, uh, you know. Um, at the same time, I was still so enthusiastic uh, and into the entire stack of all of the bands in the genre widely spread. I was all for it. The That was essentially when I began forming my extra familial bonds, if you will. The people to whom I still hold fast. Um, uh, and that essentially was really what it meant to me. The Chicago industrial scene at that time was, I'm home. I've found my people, you know?
Yeah, I mean that is Chicago to me. I haven't spent as much time there as I would like to, but have certainly carved a little bit of a niche out there over the years, and um, very welcoming scene. Obviously, a ridiculously beautifully collaborative scene.
Hmm.
I think obviously, I had Reedy on here not too long ago,
Yeah.
and it was like the classic Chicago conversation goes like this: "Hey, nice to meet you." 15 minutes later, "You're cool. Let's do a record."
Yep.
That's very Chicago. It's like, who can we add to the stew? To
Yes.
and
The
like what
stone soup, if you will.
exactly. And it's like once you're in, you're kind of in for fucking life. It doesn't matter if you came from Omaha or in my case, New England. Once you're kind of in the pocket, you're fucking there, you know.
Yep.
And
Yep.
you know, that leads to having, if I have an idea to do something, there's 20 people I can call in that city and say, come play bass, you know,
Yep.
remix this.
Well,
You know?
similarly, when you were in town uh, for Pigface and you came over and dropped some drums on Worm record, you
Dropped
know?
some drums, broke a few drums, or at least one that I can remember.
Yes, yes. The
Yeah,
final note, the final note. It was
yeah.
you were so enthusiastic, you had to follow through fully.
And I love the finished song from that session, Walk Away, on the Worm EP, which is another band you were in. Uh,
Mm.
we're probably not going to keep this linear at all, this conversation. So
I am ADHD positive, so
there you go. There you go. Well, perfect for my interviewing style. So you're part of the band Worm, uh,
mhm.
Mike Reedy, and at that time some other friends, Karen and Mike Schuberg, so uh
Kevin Martinson.
yeah, exactly. Great bunch of people all around. So yeah, Reedy gets me into the studio. 2019 was a colorful year for me.
Yeah,
I wrote a whole fucking book about it. So it was kind of like
right.
right smack in the middle of that shit. So and I'm in Chicago for a couple of days. Maybe didn't sleep those days at all, or maybe slept on a
Similarly,
yeah. I think I passed out on a couch for about 20 minutes at one point, and that was it. So I show up at the studio with our pal Roger Ebner, who's going to come up in conversation at some point, I'm sure. And not the best. What do you got? Oh, it's an Ebner Hunt t-shirt. There you go. There you go. It's all connected.
that's right.
In,
Chicago's the biggest small town in the world, man.
incestuous music scene that it is. So I show up with Roger. Not my best session experience. I'm a little draggy. There's the click going.
Yeah.
Mike thankfully starts interpretive dancing, gets me up and moving.
Yes,
We got the drum track rolling. The last kick drum hit right through the drum.
right through.
So yeah.
It
So
I still have it and I intend on using that fart sound in something else.
I hope so. I hope that lives on forever.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of how you and I connected because it was through the
Yeah.
Worm obviously was one of the openers for the Pigface 25 show at the House of Blues. Um,
I actually pulled out the flyer that we passed out.
oh, nice. Oh, that's so cool. I've never seen the double-sided before with the worm.
No, yeah.
That's so cool.
I'll send you one post
Yeah, that'd be
haste.
awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I try to collect as much goodies from that era as possible. That'd be really cool, man. Um, so you guys open the show, and what stands out to me about that is you and I first met while we're drumming together during
Yes.
Godlike with Anesh,
Yes.
they were, hey, how are you? For the,
So nice to be here right now.
yeah, in front of 3,000 people. Hi, I'm in a band with you. What's your name?
Right?
Um, but the introduction really with you guys was I'm stuck in the Martin sandwich. I've got Martin Atkins to my right, Martin King to my left.
Yes.
drumming. I'm behind the kit. I'm behind, I think, Leanne's kit at the time,
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
Steamroller with Jimmy Marcus singing
Yep.
and Dirk and everybody. So we're, it's the three of us playing the drums. And in the days following, I figured that was just it until the video starts coming out where someone's filming it and it's the three of us, but they pan behind us and there are four other drummers playing. It's you, um, Mike,
Schubert. Yep.
Kevin,
Yep.
and Jeff Shield from Gravity Kills.
Yeah.
So there were seven of us, and I had no idea. And in the video you can hear it because I know exactly when you guys come in, you just jump behind it and go for it. But the videos were being posted of the seven drummers on stage. Greta Brinkman commented, "I had no idea there were four other drummers behind you guys. I didn't either." But Martin Atkins chimes in and he goes, "It wasn't like they were miming behind you. They were playing." But sonically, you couldn't figure out what the fuck was. I mean, it's a Pigface show, you hear
Right.
the bass and the other drummer, and you kind of fucking guess for 11 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, but that was cool. So like our first like musical moment together was actually on stage at the House of Blues, and
Right.
that carried on into the studio. That was a really great afternoon. I'll have to come back and do another session with you guys in some form when I'm not all fucked up. I think that might be the best way to do it.
Reedy's interpretive dance was the best that afternoon. Giving
He's
you the cues, jumping up and down, arms all akimbo.
Yep,
It
perfect.
was
That's
so
the way
great. It was so great to watch from behind the desk, man.
Yeah, great afternoon. Always fun work with you guys in any way I possibly can. Um,
The feeling is quite mutual, I assure you.
right on, right on. To rewind a little bit, so Salamander Red, you had that, that's your first kind of out of the gate musical experience. Um, then would Project 44 be the next thing that kind of
Yeah. What's interesting about Project 44 is that uh, the night I met Chris was downstairs at the cafe in Macomb, Illinois, at Western Illinois University. Um, his band, Dead Man's Jacket, was opening for Talisman, which morphed into Salamander Red. Um, and, knowing all of the folks in Talisman at the time, and being very well attuned to their PA and their setup because it was BYO essentially at that point. Um, when so they were doing some really cool kind of agro industrial stuff, and it was a small PA, and the samples were cutting through real hard, and then I think 3 songs in or 4 songs in, Chris is like, uh, we're gonna do Stigmata. And the samples were right on. Everyone was rocking out. And actually, now that I think of it, I think Jim Curry was behind the drums. Um, but I'll get back to that. Um, Tangent. Uh, he grabbed the mic and started to sing, and I heard nothing. And there was a microphone to his right, and I'm literally standing right in front, screaming along with what should be the vocals that I'm hearing, and nothing's coming out. And so I grabbed my friend's mics, one of my friend's mics, and started singing Stigmata with her, screaming Stigmata with him, hoping that it'd give him time to, hit the PA. And he grabbed the mic out of my hand and started started singing. And what ended up happening was one of the very end of the year parties at Western, Talisman played Jim Curry's backyard, um, uh, kind of along Frat Row, but it was one of the houses like at the end near the university. And they were playing outdoors underneath this elevated deck, and they got shut down, which kind of precipitated myself, Chris, Jim Curry, and Brian Kalbfleisch hanging out in their living room because they just had instruments hanging out. And we started just rocking out to like Ministry and Nine Inch Nails stuff, and just, whatever came to mind. And once I moved to Chicago, I reconnected with Chris, and Project 44 formed essentially on the living room floor of my apartment in Evanston. I believe 1995, 1995, 1996. The details, I must say, do get a little fuzzy that far back. We wrote, I think in our first session, just hanging out, he and we wrote Everything Is Always Wrong. I had an Alesis QS6, and as a pianist, he was hanging out with a guitar and had some ideas, and I just came up with the arpeggio, or not arpeggio, but the sequence essentially on the Alesis sitting on the living room floor. And to this day, I marvel at the fact that never once when we were rehearsing or recording it was that ever sequenced. It was actually hand played. But that's how Project 44 started essentially, and it that was my first opportunity to be in the Chicago industrial scene. It was wonderful.
So you were in the mix with that when Louis and Levi were part of the band as well, correct?
Yes, yeah. Chris and I had been handling guitar duties together, and I believe it was Cubby Bear in Chicago, our first gig with Levi and Louis. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I rehearsed with and took the stage with two of my idols, essentially. You know, I mean, fucking Levi
Right.
and fucking Louis. You know what I mean? One of the things that was the first time I think that I'd ever shared a stage with another musician, and I'm speaking specifically about Louis, where the during the rehearsals, I could show him something once, and that was it. He just freaking nailed it right away. I mean, consummate professional, like ridiculous, right? Freaking Mars and MOD and Zoetrope, for crying out loud.
Right, right.
But yeah, when we shared the stage at Cubby Bear, Chris got video of that, and it was a wonderful show. And he watched the video, and a couple days later, he called me up. He's like, "Dude, you got to stop staring at Louis and smiling," because like at the time, like I had made the transition from piano to guitar somewhere around 14, 15. And I was used to being like, I can pull anything out of my ass on the piano. And then I come to the guitar and it's like, how do these things work? You know? Um, and so when it came to leads, I was extremely trepidatious. Um, Terrible imposter syndrome, which I finally overcome, but terrible imposter syndrome when it came to leads. And I would come up with them, and they were usually more kind of melodic things, and I could never really rip one off, just like throw a lick in there. It was all had to be kind of composed and rehearsed and then delivered. And when it came to that show at Cubby Bear and came to the points in the song where normally I would have taken the lead, but then hung back on the rhythm, and Louis started ripping shit, I was just like, you know, I was just like, oh, this is what I hear in my head. Yes, yes, more of that, please. So yeah, that was some really awesome shit.
Yeah, fantastic, man. Um, at some point, clearly, one Mr. Mike Reedy um partners up with you, or you partner up with Mike, and um that would be the era of Worm.
Yes.
How did that connection come to be? Because Worm, I had Mike on the program here, so he gave me
Yeah.
that history. Worm has been around for a bit.
Yeah.
How did you end up kind of jumping on the train with those guys?
Well, when I left Project 44 2005-ish, uh, Reedy assumed guitar duties
Mm,
for Project 44. And there was a show at Abbey Pub where Project 44 was opening up for Slick Idiot. And that was the evening that um, why am I, of course, I'm going to draw a blank on the name of the song. Uh, uh, does someone have Google right now? Um, I'll think of it as I tell the story. Essentially, after that show, the video, Ash stayed and played the consummate or the protagonist from Taxi Driver
mm.
in the Project 44 video, and it was filmed that evening after the show. Um, but prior to the show, I had arrived early and was hanging out and was invited down to the basement green room, um, and was hanging out down there. And Reedy looked at me. It's like, "Hey, you're Eric." Yeah. It's like, "Man, I've been trying to figure out how to play this part for a while." And I'm like, "Oh, well, it's like this." And he was like, "Oh, nice." And then we started, tooling around, just kind of going down well, how did you play this? How did you play this kind of thing? And so we began uh, our musical friendship then. Actually, that was the first time I met him in the basement of the Abbey. Um, and over time, we crossed paths, but that was uh, right after the birth of Jet, uh, who's now 18, freshman at Columbia College doing game design. And so I was kind of withdrawn and extremely, extremely sleep deprived, and didn't get out much. Missed several shows.
Mm.
Ended up not going to see The Cure do Three Imaginary Boys, 17 Seconds, and Faith in their entirety with the original musicians in New York, even though Kim told me to. But you know, it was just one of those things. I just didn't get out a lot at all. And then at some point, Chris wanted to get a ministry tribute together, which I'm totally all for. Like, let's go. Completely, let's do this. And we got together a couple of times. It never ended up getting off the ground, unfortunately. But during those sessions, it was Reedy and I on guitar. And during a smoke break, Reedy mentioned to me that the guitarist for Now I'm Nothing had departed. And I was like, well, I know all those songs like the back of my hand. So let's go if you need me. And sure enough, we started playing together with Now I'm Nothing. And at some point, Karen, who was playing bass with Now I'm Nothing at the time, she and I both worked downtown. And so we'd meet for lunch. She she looked me in the face at lunch one day and said, "You're going to be in Worm." So there are photos capturing my patching after my first rehearsal with Worm in Reedy's basement. But yeah, it kind of exemplifies the Chicago's the biggest small town in the world situation, as well as like the incestuous industrial scene, kind of how Reedy and I ended up finding each other after kind of, you know.
Right. Right. 100 bands and 5 members. That's,
Correct. Correct.
it's been that way forever. I mean, look at all the Whack Track stuff. 80% of that catalog is Al, Paul, Bill Rieflin, and somebody else. You know, that was
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think, you know, Chris had often stated his desire to kind of have that come back as he was pushing forward in the, you know, mid and late 90s. And it, to a large extent, has been successful for him in an ongoing fashion in that way. Um, you know, Worm is also the same way. It's a constant rotating cast, yet everyone comes back. And you know, I think Reedy also, uh, with his time with Martin Atkins, speaking of specific Martin, because there are many,
yes.
um, at Invisible, um, you know, he understood that as long as the foundation was strong, you can do that. You can bring people in and out. And actually, today at work, I was speaking with one of my compatriots about. He asked me, "So do you ever do acoustic shows?" I'm like, "Oh man, I love doing acoustic shows." Several times. One time on the Flabby Hoffman show, it was quite impromptu. The songs that we performed largely were nascent from the Unconquerable, which would eventually be songs on the Unconquerable, I should say. Uh, I brought Jet to the studio. It was Shu, Reedy, and myself. And Reedy's like, "Okay, so um, here's these songs neither of you have played before." And he shows us in the green room 15 minutes before we went on. And, you know, we went in and totally nailed it. Reedy and I have been asked, well, Reedy was asked to play one of his friends' bars fairly near my house in Chicago. And he asked if I would come and, you know, open with kind of just acoustic Modiviccan stuff. And we ended up pulling off some crazy, awesome stuff. Recently, Reedy joined me with Modiviccan at our most recent show at Montreux Saloon, and we did trait songs, and he joined us on Modiviccan. And the thing is, when you break it down and it's like one guitar, two guitars, vocals, three guitars, a guitar, saxophone, and hand drums, it doesn't matter. You know, as long as the song is solid,
Mhm.
you can pull it off as long as it comes out of you, you know? So yeah, that's one of the joys of playing with Reedy.
Yeah.
He can fly by the seat of his pants and enjoy himself.
And he's a fantastic dancer, as we've already established.
Yes.
And you mentioned Now I'm Nothing. We should say that's a Nine Inch Nails tribute band that's
Yes.
very active out there and in your neck of the woods. You did bring up the M word, Modiviccan. So let's go there next, because I know there's a lot to dive into with that. Is it fair to say Modiviccan is kind of your brainchild musically?
Well, so essentially how it formed, so Dave, whose kit you played when you came to the studio, he and I have also been playing together since Western Illinois University. 93, we've been friends since then. And, um, you know, we've intertwined musically several times, and we had several kind of semi-organized jam situations over the years, the late 90s, early 2000s. And so kind of always stayed together musically. Dave was a member of the Chicago metal band in the 80s, Sacrament. So he's a metal drummer.
Hmm.
Um, and he also has dived deeply into kind of, you know, more eclectic rhythms along the way. So as we explored that jam situation, we kept coming back to wanting to listen to what we had done, hone it, somehow get it to a point that was deliverable, uh, relatively deliverable to anyone who might accept it. And over time, that ebbed and flowed. Those jams, you know, a couple of years, then everyone would dissipate, people would move, etc. And at some point, it was somewhere around 2007, 2008, we got back together in a situation with the several fellows with whom we'd worked before, and began writing songs in earnest. And largely at the time, once we distilled Modiviccan to its core, it was a three-piece, guitar, bass, drums. And I assumed vocal duties, even though I'd never been a frontman, which then implied, well, then you need lyrics. And then with the lyrics came the arrangement and kind of, oh, well, what if we put this bridge in here? And, you know, kind of, I, I would say it's not necessarily my brainchild. But what I will say is that the other members graciously allow me to the leeway to craft the songs after we've come up with the riffs and kind of the progressions and some of the changes, and then come back with, oh, so by the way, while I was working on this, here's the rest of what I came up with. And they are very, very cool about you know, picking up. And that having been said, none of those things end up being really permanent. Modiviccan, uh, since we were a three-piece, which we used to call prog punk, because it's a three-piece. It sounds punk most of the time. um, as we've added over the years, we've had a guest violinist, uh, uh, two other guitarists, and one of the guitarists also played saxophone. Um, but where we're at now, uh, we began jamming with Roger Ebner, saxophonist extraordinaire,
Yes.
um, whom I met at a Pigface rehearsal at Fort Knox. It was just happenstance. Siebold couldn't make that particular rehearsal. I lived a mile away, and Reedy got asked, then Shu, and then they're like, dude, can you just go and play guitar? I'm like, yes. So that's where I met Roger. And we, started, he actually played with Modiviccan a couple of times. But uh, what really sparked us off was long conversations about the Cure.
Mm.
Um, because after I heard how he played saxophone, it reminded me of Give Me It, off the top, The Cure, which is just Albert Ayler out the ass,
Mm.
just complete atonal freaking, I'm here to just freaking blow and fuck you. Uh, and so, and then uh, Shiver and Shake, like there's the Snake Pit. He had played his wind synth with Pigface that first show. Um, so we had so many conversations about branching off of that. And he started kind of, rocking out with us a little bit. And then we started rocking out some more. Um, and it seemed to be a good fit. And at some point, uh, he invited his friend Alan Lake, uh, uh, percussionist extraordinaire, who's recorded with Brian Ferry, Madonna, you know, um, just to come and hang out and play some hand percussion. And uh, it, he locks in with Dave. We started actually jamming with him. Roger kind of brought him in gradually. We just jammed, the three of us, he, Alan, Roger, and I. Um, and he would use Dave's drum kit. And he commented immediately when he sat down, he's like, this is the first drum kit I've ever sat down on and not had the immediate urge to tune everything.
Mm.
He's like, it's tuned exactly where I think, like it's in my head. Um, it's arranged properly for where his headspace is with the kit. And when he finally joined us in a Modiviccan rehearsal, they just locked in completely. And then they began having the deep conversations about rhythms and how they approach stuff and different instruments. And you could just see them, like Roger and I looked at each other at one point because they were just like blah 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 blah, and we're just like, you know and so now Modiviccan is a five-piece. We're in the process of finishing our first full length. We've got two EPs, which are representative of our songwriting style, not our current instrumentation. Where we've taken those songs these days is insane with this lineup. But where we've been able to go with this record and with what we think is our next approach after this is finished. Um, it's quite avant-garde. It's completely genre non-specific. Um, we vary greatly and are succinct in doing so. Um, you know, what really I love about Modiviccan is it's a total drama-free band. We all support each other. We listen very well together. We take each other places musically that we've never been.
Mm.
Um, with this band, the freedom I have to explore on the guitar, on the bass, vocally, on the keys, um, is extraordinary. And everyone to a person who's in the band has expressed the same. So it's pretty remarkable. I'm really proud to be in it.
Well, it says a lot about the band when you can say it takes you somewhere else, considering your history and considering the history of the other participants. That's a great thing because you've all had very rich experiences leading up to this point, so it's exciting, it's nice when I connect with friends who are doing their creative work in the here and now that's taking them somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
It's really beautiful to see that, and the combinations of people that sort of naturally fall in together. And Roger Ebner, talk about somebody who lives the embodiment of Chicago. That guy's played with everybody. And I
Yes,
don't know
sir.
how time, I mean, and look, it's funny because he kind of appeared out of like thin
The
air.
ether. Yes.
Yeah, in 2016,
Yep.
he just sort of, he made friends with Atkins and he's in Pigface, which is how it always happens.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
he went from, being a guy who was added to the lineup for those 2016 shows to playing with the entire city of Chicago. And
Yeah.
any collaboration, I've got something with him. We're wrapping up right now with some other familiar faces from that crowd,
Yes,
including
sir.
Karen is part of that.
Yeah.
So he's always kind of a moving target creatively, and it's fantastic. And with Roger, you get him on the phone, it's like you got to set aside a couple hours because he's always got a lot of great things to say, uh,
Absolutely.
projects and where his head is, and
Yep.
brilliant guy. So I think, I can speak for both of us, surely that, our lives as musicians have been made richer,
Absolutely.
knowing that guy for sure.
Absolutely.
Um, Excellent. So, Modiviccan, definitely a bright future. I'm looking forward to checking that out. You had mentioned when we were talking before we connected for this, there was a project you're either currently involved in or had been involved in called Primary.
Yeah. Uh, I well, I've played keyboard, guitar, and now currently play bass for the Cure tribute, Primary, here in Chicago. Uh, the Cure is one of my very favoriteest bands ever. It was the Carnage Visors of the first tattoo I ever got. I apologize for blinding people with my uh, totally uh, bright white skin. Um, but the Cure, and so as a classical pianist, um, I really enjoyed Bach, as I may have mentioned earlier. Um, I'm very mathematically minded. I went into physics and math, and uh, I think it has something to do with my ADHD and possible uh, autism spectrum stuff. But that having been said, the orchestral composition, the layering of the of Bach. When I heard The Cure for the first time, I heard uh, I heard chords that were completely just split between instruments and layered in a with rock instruments instead of classical instruments, you know, for the first time. I mean, not for the first time, but I really listened to it for the first time, right? And so those The Cure really became a foundational piece of my musical brain. And uh, primary first, my first time I played with primary, I did double duty. It was actually not too long after the Pigface show. Now I'm Nothing played with primary at W.O.R.M in Berwyn, and I played keyboards with primary at that time, and then played guitar with Now I'm Nothing the next set. But getting together with people, and similarly with Now I'm Nothing, getting together with people who have a very deep love of a particular band, and like have listened to the songs thousands of times, and the instrumentation is embedded in their brains. It's always a pleasure to get together with people in that fashion, and just totally rock out stuff that you're totally geeking out on together, you know. And so I've been playing bass with primary for a bit, and I think we have a guest. Someone coming in the room? Wilbur, come in the room. Sir, have a seat.
Could that be Roger Ebner?
How you doing, Joel?
Doing good, man. We're recording an interview. How's it going?
Cool.
I know, Roger, you just wanted to sneak on the channel again, right?
Yeah, that's
What's
it.
up, brother?
How you doing, man?
Pretty good, pretty good. Welcome.
Thank you. It's Chicago, Joe.
That's been the entire crux of this conversation, you know?
Yeah,
Well, how the fuck are you?
I'm doing good. Doing
Excellent.
good. Yeah. Just had my first lesson on saxophone from a new guy, a new potential mentor. The
Nice.
guy's in the UK. His name is Jamie Anderson. He's got a lot of cool stuff on his website. And he unlocked for me the mystery of Altissimo today.
That was not Altissimo.
It was close.
Thank
It
you.
was an extended range of your voice.
Thank
so,
you.
Yeah, technically.
So, well,
so that was really cool, So I think it's going to work out with this guy.
nice. So what I want to know is we're recording this, for the channel. It's Chicago. People just show up. Let's record here right now, since we can figure something out. You got the studio. I can, tap on the screen or something to give you a beat. We'll do a record. We'll put it
Right?
tomorrow because it's Chicago. So that's how it works.
Well, clearly you have your Zoom configured to use the production ready audio and all of that with all the appropriate plugins.
I'm lucky I was able to turn it on. I mean, that's how it's run,
Nice.
technology. So
I see you've got the machine that goes bing.
yes, pretty much it. Pretty much it. Well, I do want to hit on a couple more things before we wrap up, Eric. One thing is you have your own.
Oh, all right,
Yeah,
cool.
we'll get together afterwards.
All right.
All right.
You can
Good seeing
stay.
you.
You can stay.
Huh?
You can stay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
You,
Hang
you,
out.
you can be
I
my
I didn't want a photo bomb.
we're literally YouTube bombing right now. This is
Right.
gonna
YouTube
be
bomb.
Yes.
oh, stay, Roger.
All
We're
right, yeah, I
friends.
will.
We've already gotten done talking about you for the last 20 minutes. So you
Yeah.
might
Oh, okay.
and I'm not joking about that. We were just talking about,
Seriously.
Oh, wow.
yeah. So let's talk about someone else, see if they'll show up. Who can we talk about?
Right.
So Louis, going back to Louis, great guitarist. Is he coming through the door? No. Or
He's probably working tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, he works for Jam Productions stage crew. So he does a lot of load-ins, load-outs, early afternoons, sometimes mornings, late nights. I see him at Aragon when I go over there.
Yeah.
Our drummer Dave works security at Aragon too. So yeah.
cool. Very small
Oh,
world.
there's interconnections.
Yes, Chicago.
Yeah.
It's the biggest small town in the world.
Yes, it is. A lot of motherfuckers in that city.
You can use Modiviccan as to supplant motherfucking. Just want, if you're in mixed company, children around,
Yeah.
man, I don't want any Modiviccan snakes on this Modiviccan plane.
Stay dangerous.
Line from a movie.
Snakes on a plane.
Snakes on a plane.
Yes.
Well,
Samuel L. Jackson accepted the role specifically if they were not going to change the name of the movie from Snakes on a Plane.
that's right. That's right.
You
So
better not change that Modiviccan name.
let's all pretend we're doing an interview. How about that?
Yes, sir. And cut.
No, I want to talk to you about your studio. Let's get into that.
Yeah.
I know that's been something you've been working on. So,
Maynott Studios.
Maynott Studios. What's the genesis of that, and where are things? Where are things at? Where are things at with that studio?
Yeah. So essentially, when Modiviccan recorded at Louis' space at Right on Carroll for our first EP and for our second EP, actually, both EPs. And I became, Project 44 recorded over here and mixed over here. Louis mixed our second record over here, essentially, and filmed Warpath. That was the name of the song.
There
Sorry.
you go. Cool.
Yes. So
Somewhat non sequitur for me, but I get it.
yes, it was something I couldn't remember earlier.
Yeah.
So essentially, I and Dave had been over here over the years, a long time. At some point, we had been rehearsing over at Fort Knox, and we're trying to record our second EP there. And I asked him if he would come over and try and help engineer while we were trying some things. And at some point, he was just like, just come down, just come down. We'll figure it out. And over the course of that recording session, he intimated that perhaps we would want to split the room with him. And I was like, that would be awesome. We totally can't afford it. But I didn't say that out loud. I wasn't going to say, yes, Modiviccan is moving to Louis' studio. We left it open. I'm like, yeah, let me talk to everyone. And at some point, he told me what he was paying for rent here. And he just wanted to split it. And I was like, yep, we're coming over. So, but he had just moved to Yorktown I think, yeah, Yorktown, southwest of Chicago, like an hour away when there's no traffic, right? But he kept the studio, and he basically wanted to let it go at some point. And that meant that he had worked with me on Logic and editing and mixing. And so he would kind of let me use his stuff for times when we were here. And then when he left, it was all gone. The monitors, the sub, the PA, like mixer, PA, everything, all gone. And so Dave and I had long lamented that we couldn't, that we had to be on the clock whenever we recorded. And we'd long had kind of a history of doing slight projects of actually trying to multi-track record our live jams and stuff like that. And I was like, I can be the engineer. You want to split the stuff with me if I figure out what we need and price it out? And we ended up doing a Sweetwater, 48-month financing on stuff. And that was the last large purchase I did not tell my wife about ahead of time. That having been said, what it afforded us was the ability to not only, work on recording our live jams real time, multi-track. It brought me to a point where I became an audio engineer. I had to figure everything out. Mic placement, freaking, everything. And so that led me to a point where I was able to do that for other people. And we came to an agreement that it was cool if I used our stuff to do the thing with other people. And then, at some point, after Roger joined the band, he joined us in the expenditure part of things, and has become a partner with Dave and myself in the studio. And so essentially when I have time, and if everyone is, cool with me taking a weekend or something to do some recording with other people, I'm happy to take it on. One of the things I really, really love about being behind the console is getting the performer into a place where they're most comfortable and connect with them in a way that elicits their best performance. Developing that rapport, making sure they're at ease. I'm a self-avowed Fred Rogersian. Mr. Rogers is my guy. And so when I get behind the console and hitting the talkback mic with someone who's in the live room, for me, it's all about getting them into that place where they can just go, and so it's been a real privilege to be able to share this, to be able to not only take it over from Louis, maintain it in a way that keeps its history. He was one of the first two rooms in this building in 2002, 2003. And to be able to keep this room functional at a high level honors its history, and that's one of the things that I really, really love about this place. And the room sounds awesome.
It sounds incredibly awesome. mean,
So
what are the dimensions of the live space?
25 by 35,
And the
15-foot ceiling.
15-foot ceiling.
Yeah.
And just the natural acoustics in there are incredible.
It's so good. Yeah. So I feel very fortunate, very lucky to be able to do this here. And then to be able to work with other people to help them achieve their goal. Worked with Reedy on the Unconquerable, edited, mixed, and then Wade Allen mastered. He kicks ass. And you know, one of the best things about it is, for instance, with Reedy, while we were working on the Unconquerable, I wasn't just, you know, doing the work and pushing the buttons. He was actively learning, and now he's doing his own recording and mixing. And we get to, you know, trade notes and go back and forth. It's a constant learning experience. And yeah, just really, like I said, feel fortunate and privileged to be able to do it.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I wish you well with it moving forward, man.
Thank you.
Which kind of brings me to the last bullet point on my list. I know you had mentioned you're working on something under your own steam, under the name Boltpile.
Mm-hmm.
So wanted to, you know, kind of dive into that and see where you are with things in that direction.
Yes, sir. Well, so uh, you know, we've talked about my having been in Project 44. During that time period, I wrote many sketches, you know, that didn't end up becoming Project 44 songs, for instance. And then after I left Project 44 and kind of wasn't in the industrial scene for a while, they lay fallow. And at some point, I still have a lot of the stuff was written on like Cubase 2, you know, and so I still have the files backed up on a CDR at some point that I hope is still valid, but you know it's not. But I happened upon a cassette while I was going through, you know, sorting some of my stuff in boxes, you know, and I was like, what the heck? And I put it in, and it was like, oh, oh. The very first Boltpile song, I was, you know, tapping out, not using sequencers with my fingers, and I had the mic live, working with headphones in my apartment in Bridgeport, and I had a very squeaky chair, and I was using input monitoring with the heavy delay, heavy reverb, and when I would lean back, I would hear the sound of the chair just going through my, you know, the mic and then picking it up. And so I built kind of a song out of that. And that was the song that I found on that cassette, which I was like, well, where does this go? Where, you know, where does this fit? Modiviccan's not going to play that. Where, you know, what happens with it? And I just started thinking that I don't really, or hadn't really had an outlet for my thing. Modiviccan is a collaboration. You know, I do the lyrical work and the vocals and you know, a lot of the song arrangement and stuff like that. But it's largely a collaborative work, and I realized that at some point I need an outlet for being able to lay down things that I actually hear in my head, and to capture them that way. And having heard that song on that cassette, that bounce on that cassette, kind of sparked me into it. I know Roger can tell you, and I'm sure he has, about you know, the time spent working on other people's things and the need to get you out there.
Right.
And so over the COVID times, when I would come down here for 16 hours at a time, I just started exploring and got a few new sketches down, stuff that needs to be worked on. Again, it's important to make sure we finish things that we've begun before making other things priorities. It's very important that the Modiviccan record comes out as soon as possible. But that having been said, yeah, Boltpile is going to be all over the place, unapologetically all over the place, because I have classical music background, I have industrial roots, I love Lush, Cocteau Twins, The Cure, I love Curve, I love frickin' Emmylou Harris, for instance. I must correct myself. My very first band was a bluegrass jam at one of my dad's friends' machine shops in my hometown, where it was like 11 guys on a Wednesday night rocking out bluegrass stuff. And I would bring the fiddle and play You Are My Sunshine when they asked me to. So, you know, I have this broad range of influences, and I am looking forward to Boltpile being kind of like my outlet of whatever the fuck I feel like doing, you know? So, yeah.
Excellent. And look, Chicago and the world needs a project called Boltpile. There's a
Thank
call
you.
to that name. Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
It has to be. It has to be. Period.
It's
It's a great name, isn't
thanks, man.
it? Yeah.
I
Excellent.
love it.
Right on, man. Well, look, we have talked the ever-loving shit out of this stuff. And
Yes, sir.
if Roger's behind you, I know that means there's gonna be some music a coming. So I'm gonna let you two gentlemen get to it. But in the meantime, Eric, always great to connect with you, my friend. I really enjoyed doing this. Thanks for coming on.
Likewise. I am so thankful to be able to share this time with you. This was a wonderful, wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. We'll have to do it again sometime soon. And you know, we'll be collaborating and probably making some noise at some point in the future, I'm sure as well. So
Excellent.
we'll see how that goes. We'll put that guy behind you to work on our stuff, and then
Yes. Yes.
Happy to do it, man.
which is how it goes. Speaking of which, Roger, I got to talk to you in the not too distant future about this thing of ours. So
Yeah.
we'll keep that going. But gentlemen, love you both. You know that.
Thank you so much. Love you too.
Absolutely, man. We will do this again soon.
Talk to you soon, brother.
Take care, Joel.
Bye.